the biggest thing I want people to remember is take each substance by itself. Like almost like mentally picture them and put like little barriers between them. The shellfish is shellfish. I don't feed. And I had someone the other day go, well, they're allergic to shellfish. I'm like, well, then don't feed them. Don't give them any, and we'll be fine. They can still react to something. If they're reacting to shellfish, they have allergies. If you have allergies, you're more likely to react to other things. But it doesn't mean you're going to react to something specific like coconut and iodine.
Clock in, scrub up, and join us behind the red line. You're listening to First Case, a perioperative podcast bringing you exciting interviews, engaging discussions, and innovative solutions that are changing the way patients receive surgical care. Each episode, we talk to frontline staff, perioperative leadership, and nursing entrepreneurs from across the country as they share their stories, experience, and expertise on the industry we love. From the back table to the boardroom, from wheels in to wheels out, we tackle the real-life issues affecting the OR. Whether you're tuning in for surgical service education or inspiration, we're glad you're here. And now, it's time to roll back and start the first case.
On this week's episode of First Case, we are speaking with Laila Bailey. She is the service leader for Pediatrics and Urology at Inova Fairfax Hospital, and she is also incredibly passionate about teaching others about the false belief that we have related to shellfish allergy in our patients. Does a shellfish allergy mean that a patient is allergic to betadine or the povidone iodine-based products that we might use? The answer is coming up in our interview with Laila. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Chris Blevins.
And I'm Melanie Perry.
From the studios of Healthcare HQ, you're listening to First Case.
Joining us now is Laila Bailey, service leader for Pediatrics and Urology at Inova Fairfax Hospital. Laila, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to get to talk to you about this topic today. And there's really kind of a history to this topic and our relationship that I kind of want to bring everybody in on. So we're going to have story time for just a second. But earlier this year, I posted a video online highlighting this false belief that we have been practicing under for years, and it's permeated our nursing practice. And it's this belief that if a patient has a shellfish allergy, then you can't use iodine-based prep solutions on them, and there's a connected allergy between shellfish and iodine-based products. And there were plenty of people in the comments who told me that I was wrong and that this was legitimate and that I was putting out false information. But I did have proof. I had proof from AORN. I had proof from the American Academy of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology. And there was a lot of research available to say that this firmly held belief that we have been practicing under was not true. And actually, it was your article, Laila, that I had referenced from AORN that you saw that I had used in my comments of my post to be like, hey, here's information supporting this. And you reached out to me a few days later, and it was nice to get connected to you. And then kind of the fallout from that video and thinking about this topic was really the inspiration for this whole season, to think about myth busting and tackling those things that we just really believe are true. And there's research out there that says that it's not. And so when I put the season together, of course, we were going to talk about shellfish allergy and iodine. And I'm like, I'm going to talk to Laila. So thank you. I really am excited that you're here, that we get to talk to you. But before we jump into the topic any further, or I just, do it all myself because I'm running my mouth, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
I really appreciate it. This is a personal as well as professional passion for mine, because I actually am one of those people that was diagnosed as a iodine allergy. And so it affected my care. It affected my care when I had cancer, which we can talk about later. It's affected several. I can look back and see many instances. So I'm really glad that I was able to write an article, speak at AORN, and bring it to the forefront. But I am Laila Bailey. I am the service leader for Pediatrics and Urology at Inova Fairfax Hospital. I've been a nurse for 40 years.
That's
so
awesome.
Don't hold that against me. I've been in
absolutely
the
will
OR
not.
39.
Wow.
This 39 years ago this month, I started my
Congratulations.
my
That's awesome.
fellowship program. It wasn't called that back then. long time after I graduated my BSN, I finally went back for my master's. So I am licensed as a clinical nurse specialist, but there aren't any jobs for that right now. So I use it as a service leader. I mean, it works. And then I went back and got my doctorate in nursing practice at Vanderbilt a few years ago. And that helps me just try to learn new things for nurses. Like, that's my big passion, is trying to make things better. Like, as a service leader, my goal is always to help the people who I work with. And this is just an extension of it.
I love that you're using your education to make things better for your patients and also to help the people that you work with and help your staff. That's really what we want to be doing when we are improving our practice and making it better for our patients at any operating room where we're working. And I'm curious if we can just talk about this myth. How did this myth even come about that if a patient had a shellfish allergy, you were allergic to iodine?
So it's really hard to trace down, but there was a study in the 1970s where a doctor was looking at iodine and patients who had reacted to iodinated contrast. That's where it started. And one of the things they found was people who have food allergies actually have a slightly higher risk of reacting to contrast than people who don't. Any allergy, actually. And so, of course, he saw that people who had a shellfish allergy react, and he's like, well, this is iodine, and that has iodine, so guess what? It must be the iodine. And that's really where this myth was born. It's just it just has this life of its own that doesn't have any basis in fact.
That's interesting. And the American Academy of Asthma, Allergy, and Immunology has an entire article written about this history as well. And they were saying a lot of the same thing, like all the 1970s back there. And then what they found was a correlation that they suddenly turned into a causation, and they never did any further research to say that, yes, this is actually connected. It was just like you said, they just saw something they thought might be a connection and just rolled with it and started passing this around as fact. And then here we are today, however many years later it is from the 70s, believing something that actually was never proven to be true, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's so ingrained that people, and I work with a lot of staff members. We have a 30-bed OR. I'm running around all the time. I've taught this. They'll call me, go, hey, every week I'll get a call like, hey, Laila, this patient has a shellfish allergy. What can I use to prep with? I'm like, beta, you can povidone iodine.
Yeah.
you can do that. Don't worry. Are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. You got this. And they're trying to do the right thing. And it's hard because we've been so beaten up into it. Like it's been drilled into our heads. So it's going to take a long time to get rid of, but we just keep trying.
And I think, too, it's also a litigious type fear because we're afraid of making a mistake. Obviously, we don't want to harm our patient. And so it's rooted in not harming the patient. But then also knowing that the ramifications of malpractice or any type of something going to court. And then what if this case goes to court and then they see that I use betadine on a patient who had a shellfish allergy? And even though there's not a connection, I think there's this fear of the ramifications of, well, what if I use it? You know what I mean? Do you think so?
I think so. I mean, so when I first learned to scrub, I would react to betadine scrub. So I'm listed as betadine allergy. And so eventually someone put in my chart that I'm allergic to iodine. I'm like, okay, I don't know what the heck that means, but whatever. Didn't even think about it. And, when I have a thyroid issue, so they go and say, oh, go take iodine pills. So I go buy iodine pills and I go eat them, even though I'm listed as an iodine allergy person. So we don't think about the logic of it because it just doesn't make sense. And if you think about, well, someone who has an iodine allergy, but we're giving them table salt and that has iodine. So,
and that's just it. You bring up a good point because you can't actually be allergic to iodine. What we're seeing is patients, if they have an allergy, it's something in the iodine-based prep solution that they're allergic to, but it's never the iodine itself because a patient actually cannot be allergic to iodine. And people don't think about that, but we use table salt. It's got iodine in it. Our thyroid needs iodine to function. So we're believing in an iodine allergy that's not there. It's really an allergy for a patient, that would be based in the betadine, something in that prep solution.
Yes,
but for you,
or another chemical, yeah.
Or it's another chemical, something.
Yeah.
So for you though, that listed allergy to iodine then actually caused problems with your care later, right? What happened?
So when I was undergoing my cancer, I had breast cancer in 2019, and I was getting chemo and I was still working full time because that's just the person I am. I can't sit at home because I feel sorry for myself. So I went to work and I had lost all my hair and my blood counts were low. I looked really funny in a hat because it stuck to the top of my head, because I found out later the hair really helps you get rid of your sweat. And without it, your OR hat kind of sits on your head. My hats would go over my eyes. I had to push them back.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
It was really funny. But I'm really short of breath and I knew my counts were down. So I called my oncologist. I'm like, hey, I think I need blood. And they're like, well, probably, but why don't you come see us? So I leave work and I drive across the street to the cancer center, which is across the street from my hospital.
That's convenient.
I get out and I go see the nurse practitioner and she's like, yeah, we think it's that. But we should just do a quick CT, make sure you don't have a PE. I'm like, okay. So as I'm leaving there, they caught me. Go, wait. You're listed as an iodine allergy. You can't have a CT here. You have to go to the ER. So I drove downstairs and I get in my car and I drove across the street back to the hospital to go to the ER. And I spent 6 hours in the ER. And at some point, when I remember thinking to myself, well, I haven't died yet, so I don't think I have a PE. I think I'm okay.
I think I'm fine. Yeah.
I think I'm okay. But, one of the doctors came in, one of the older doctors, and they were like, well, and I'm not, she just was aware of more older tests than someone who just was like, what do? We don't know what to give. She's like, well, there's this nuke med test we used to use, and we should do that on you. And it should be pretty good. We should get good results. I'm like, okay. So I go have the nuke med test and I come back and they came back in and said, it looks good. We think you're okay. But if you have more trouble, give us a call and come back. And I'm like, okay. So in that one situation, I had a delay in care. I had the wrong test. And on top of it, I had to pay a $100 copay because I was in the ER.
Right. Yeah.
So these things happen to patients every day. This myth is not benign. It affects patients in ways we can't measure, like what happens in the OR. There's a lot of things we do that don't fit.
Right, exactly. So let's talk about each of these things, as we've talked about shellfish allergy and we've talked about, allergy to our povidone iodine-based products, and we've talked about iodine allergy. So let's break them down. So if a patient has a shellfish allergy, what is it that patient is actually allergic to, usually?
So they're allergic to a protein within the shellfish. The most common protein is tropomyosin. It can be others, but that is the most common one. But it is not to anything else. It is to a protein. It's a protein-based IgE-mediated allergy, meaning you make an antibody to that antigen.
Got it. So then if a patient has an allergy to our povidone iodine-based prep solutions, what is it in those typically that they're allergic to?
So if they react to that, almost exclusively it's a reaction to the concentration of chemicals within the solution. There is a very rare reports of actual allergic reactions, actual developing antibodies, but they're extremely rare, 0.04% of people who react to povidone iodine have that. So really it's mostly to the concentration of the solution. There's some chemical in there that's bothering their skin.
Yeah. But it's not the iodine itself, because like we've already said, a person cannot be allergic to iodine, right?
Exactly. You cannot be allergic. You'd be dead. It's kind of like saying you're allergic to sodium, right? You can't be allergic to sodium. You can't be allergic to iodine. They're very similar type minerals.
Yeah, and also I was reading somewhere else about this idea of being allergic to iodine. Like iodine itself, it's the molecule, or is the word molecule? Is that the
it's
right
a molecule.
Word? The molecule itself is too small to produce any type of allergic reaction, and your body uses iodine to function. So, like you said, it'd be like saying you were allergic to sodium, or our patients who tell us, they're. Well, I'm not going to go down there. We're not going to talk about what our patients tell us they're allergic to, but yeah,
we had a lot of interesting ones.
We got a lot of weird ones, and I don't want to jump on that and then not make my analogy correct. But just in general, you can't be allergic to iodine, but people really do believe that they can be. And connecting also to contrast solutions. Once again, it's not the iodine that's in the contrast solution that a patient might be allergic to, right? It's something else within the contrast.
So the contrast is a very unique situation. So it's very poorly understood, but what the theory is that contrast has thickness to it. It's osmolarity. It's kind of how you measure how many molecules are in a liter of water, whatever it is. I don't remember how they measure it. I used to be a physics major, but that was like 40 years ago.
You've slept since then. It's okay.
Not going to remember that. So what happens is when you inject contrast into the bloodstream, it's thicker than blood. So blood's about 280. Contrast can go anywhere from Visopaque at 290 to Conray at like 1200. So you have all this wide range. And so your low osmolarity contrast, your Visopaque, your Omnipaque, Optiray, they are going to have less reactivity than your high osmolarity contrasts like Conray, Hypaque, some of these other ones. When you inject it, it causes your body to get the mast cells in your bodies to stimulate and release histamine. So it looks like an allergic reaction, but it doesn't create antibodies. People can react to contrast on the very first time they have it.
Interesting.
So that's not something we think about in the OR. Like, we're like, well, they've never reacted before. We should be fine. But so if you're in a vascular case or something like that, that's what you worry about.
That is interesting. I didn't realize that contrast solution, you could have a reaction on the very first exposure. And that is something definitely to add to my arsenal of awareness to pay attention to for our patients. So, and also thinking about that, some of the comments in the video that I posted were people saying, well, we prepped with betadine and this patient had a shellfish allergy. And then we prepped with betadine and they were covered in hives, like, later on in the case. And I think that's another example of maybe some correlation and not necessarily causation, because you can't necessarily pin those hives down just on the betadine. It could be the antibiotic the patient was given. It could have been a whole host of things going on within the case. I mean, that's my assumption. Am I correct?
Yeah. So you can be allergic to shellfish and betadine, but they're not related. It's like being allergic to eggs and soy, right? My son is allergic to eggs and soy. They're not they're both food allergies, but they're not related to each other. In the same way, you could be allergic, you could have had a prior reaction to contrast and have had a reaction to betadine, but that they're not related to each other. So if I don't use, I've had people ask me all the time, I'll be like, if they've had a prior reaction to povidone iodine, don't use it. But, like I'll have people ask me, does DuraPrep, which has povacrylex iodine, is that the same as povidone iodine? And the question is actually no, because they're different chemical carriers of the iodine to the skin.
Oh, really? No, that's news to me. I didn't know that.
They're not the same thing.
Okay.
And so if you're not reacting to the iodine, you're reacting to the carrier, then it could be that they could do one or the other. So that's one of those situations too. Like, the biggest thing I want people to remember is take each substance by itself.
Right.
Like almost like mentally picture them and put like little barriers between them. The shellfish is shellfish. I had someone the other day go, well, they're allergic to shellfish. I'm like, well, then don't feed them.
Yeah, don't give them any to eat.
Don't give them any and we'll be fine.
Right.
They can still react to something. If they're reacting to shellfish, they have allergies. If you have allergies, you're more likely to react to other things.
Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean the shellfish is causing it. Causing it.
But it doesn't mean you're going to react to something specific like povidone iodine or contrast.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's actually a good way to put it, to classify it. Look at them all separately. Everything is in its own category, and it never means that a patient could not potentially be allergic to all three, but they are three individual allergies, not allergies caused by shellfish allergy does not cause contrast allergy, does not cause betadine or povidone iodine-based solution allergies. They're all three individual allergies. And that is a really good way of putting them in the right boxes so that you can approach them correctly, I think. I like that.
Yeah, that's what I try to think of it as, is that they're separate things.
Yeah. So tell me then how you were able to write this article for AORN to be published to share with everybody about this information. Did they reach out to you? Did you reach out to them? How did that work? So I started on this when we had our contrast shortage in 2022. Like we had no contrast. Like all the contrast I've been a service. I had a DMP, right? I have all this stuff, and I was still going on the stuff that when the person who was the urology specialist before me said to me, "Well, we use Conray for people who don't have allergies and Optiray for people who do." And I'm like, "Okay," sure. And I never looked at it. Yeah, right. There's a lot of things that we just take because somebody told us, and that we just roll with it.
Exactly. But then we ran out of those contrasts, and I'm getting all these different brands. I'm like, well, what can I use? I don't know what to do. So I started looking it up, and then I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
Pump the brakes.
Pump the brakes. What do you mean? There's no such thing as an iodine allergy. Whoa. And so that's how it started. So I started doing research, and I just kept digging and digging and digging. And so I wrote an article, and I submitted it to talk at AORN, which I did in 2024. And then I wrote the article and submitted it at the same time. And it took about 8 months. AORN likes having articles. If you have a well thought out article, if you have an idea, you see something, write it down. That's my only thing.
Yes, I can second that. I write for their article for novice nurses or for new perioperative nurses for their, it's the e-magazine, the Stitch. Yeah. I contribute to that on a pretty regular basis. I've never had anything printed actually in the journal, and I'm jealous that you got a presentation selected because I have submitted presentations and abstracts for multiple years in a row, and I've yet to get one picked. But maybe next year's my year. I don't know.
I hate to tell you, I've done 2 of them.
Oh,
I've had 2 articles and 2, but it's taken me a long time. I've been doing this a while.
Yeah.
So,
but still,
no, that's one of the things I always try to tell people. If you have an idea, you see something, for me, for this, it was like, wait a minute, we got to get the word out on this. I need to try to write it down. And there was a lot of editing going back and forth. This was not perfect. Now I'm reading it, I'm going, I want it to stay this way because this is perfect. And they're going, no. So there was a lot of editing back and forth, and it took months to get it to where we wanted it. And then that's how it got in there. I was very, very excited that they published it.
It's a great resource to have. And I was able to find it very quickly, just searching, the shellfish allergy and betadine allergy connection or whatever it is. I Googled, shellfish allergy and iodine allergy. And I looked, for AORN to come up in the search options, and it did very quickly. I'm like, oh, great. Here's what I need. And we know that information from AORN is information that we can trust and we can apply it to our practice. And so it was good to have very just handy, quickly accessed information, and really not even, oh my gosh, 1 or 2 days after I had posted the video about this and then had done all this researching, not just online, just looking at articles, looking at different stuff to make sure that I was not off my rocker, because even me in my brain, I was like, ooh, I know it's not true, but maybe, you don't want to put something out online and then be flame sprayed because you were totally wrong. Then we had a patient come in for surgery a couple days later, and the charge nurse was given a report, and they're like, oh, by the way, this patient has a shellfish allergy. Make sure you don't prep with betadine. And I'm like, hold up. That's not right. We can prep with betadine unless they have a betadine allergy. It is okay to prep them with betadine. So trying to dispel the myths that are perpetuated, and new people still come in and they still get taught this. So you're right. Getting the word out that this is a practice, or it's a belief that we need to change so that we approach it correctly, is really necessary.
Well, and I don't know about you, but I see it a lot, because you have the patient who is going to have a lap chole. Oh, we can't, they've had a shellfish allergy. We can't do a cholangiogram. Mm-hmm. Well, if we don't do the cholangiogram, then you're going to do an ERCP later. Now you're going to give them a second surgery, a second anesthesia. So there's all these instances. Once I started researching it, I saw all the times where we're doing the wrong procedure, or we're not doing the complete procedure.
We're not giving them the full course of care.
Exactly. As a urology person, I'm in cysto. We have 2 cysto rooms, so I'm in cysto a lot. We give a lot of contrast.
Yeah, you do.
And I'm the contrast queen when it comes to that. And the nurses in there and the techs. And whenever I say nurses, by the way, I mean nurses and techs, because they work together. It's a whole team thing. They're always doing their best. So when you have a patient who you're not sure about, if you don't use contrast, you can't see the collecting systems. There's a whole thing for us. Mm-hmm. So this really helped us, because if you look at patients, if you take the whole vat of people who are listed as iodine allergy, and you take out all the patients who are listed as shellfish and all the patients who are listed as, let's say, then they have a much smaller vat.
Yeah.
And then when you take out, let's say you're just looking for betadine, profidone, iodine prep solution.
Yeah.
Just take out the iodine. Think how few people we're actually dealing with when we're dealing with prep. It's just very small.
It is. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And And it's really interesting to hear you say about the contrast allergy is actually separate from the betadine prep allergy. I know we've talked about them being in different buckets, but you think, oh, okay, Podium iodine-based this or iodine-based that, and you want to lump them together, and then realizing that, oh, my contrast allergy is completely separate from a potential betadine prep allergy. And I worked in pain management for 4 years before I came into the OR. And then when I was in the OR, one day a week, I was doing pain management cases that we did in the operating room. We gave a lot of Omnipaque, so much Omnipaque, because we would use it for a lot of our different injections. But same kind of thing. Oh, we were always told, oh, they have an iodine allergy or a contrast allergy, we can't use it. Well, but a lot of our patients, we wouldn't be able to use the Omnipaque because they had on their chart that they had a shellfish allergy. And so then we weren't going to use the Omnipaque because, potentially that was a reaction that actually wasn't. And like you said, it's affecting patients' care because they're not getting the full scope of the treatment they could get because we are withholding treatment. We're withholding it with good intentions. We're not doing it because we don't want to harm them, except our understanding of what could harm them isn't correct. So that's why these conversations are so helpful, so that we can get the right information out, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's amazing how. And it's ingrained in our physicians too, because I've had a couple of situations where someone has asked me, well, the doctor has a question, and I will answer it. It doesn't matter if it's one of my physicians or in another service. If you call me, I come. And that's how we work together in the OR anyway, right? So if someone has a question, I'll answer it. I will help them however I can. Because having been that patient who had the wrong stuff, I don't want someone else to have the wrong stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's actually a good way to tie this conversation up, remembering how the patient and their care can be affected if we, even with good intentions, have the wrong information. And so I want to give you the opportunity to leave our audience with any final thoughts, anything else you want to say before we close this conversation out. Just give you back the mic and any other advice you have for everybody listening.
My biggest thing is ask the questions. So if the patient's listed as an iodine allergy, ask them the questions. Ask them, well, was it just something you ate? Was it just some soap on your skin? Was it during an x-ray exam? If your patient's never had an x-ray or CT, they probably never reacted to contrast. If they've never had surgery, they maybe never have had povidone iodine on their skin. If it's just something they ate, right, then it's probably shellfish. So for me, it's really important you find it out, write it down, and document it, and put it in the chart, and tell the patient, you're not allergic to iodine. You're allergic to shellfish. You can have these other things. It's going to be okay. And help the other staff. Like, I spoke to some people who did pre-surgery preparation for patients, some nurses who work on that, and they didn't know this. And so it would help them to better prepare the patient and correct the chart before we ever saw it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great takeaway, is going back to the patient and actually taking the time to interview them thoroughly and to ask the right questions so that you can put the right allergy in the right box. And that way we don't interfere with their care, even through good intention. So Laila, thank you so much for joining us today, for helping us have this conversation, and just for sharing your expertise with our audience. I really appreciate it.
Oh, anytime. Anytime they have a question, just let me know.
Love it. Thank you so much. That was Laila Bailey, service leader for pediatrics and urology at Inova Fairfax Hospital. And, today's interview really highlighted how something that we've always been taught and taken as fact just might not be true, which is why it is so important to stay up to date with the latest information, guidance, research, and why it's so important to never be afraid to change your practice and change what you think based on that research and information when it's available. If it's demonstrating a better way of doing things, or if it's proving something that we've always thought was true actually isn't. It's okay to change what you believe when the research and the guidance out there actually shows and demonstrates that what we've been taught just wasn't right. And with this shellfish allergy connected to a betadine allergy or an iodine contrast allergy, there is no connection. But because somebody saw a correlation, they turned it into a causation, and then generations of nurses and medical professionals have been taught that a shellfish allergy means you're allergic to iodine or iodine-based products, and that's really not true. Patients can definitely have allergies to all three. They certainly can, and we need to investigate that and make sure we know what their allergies are. But just remember that a shellfish allergy does not mean that a patient is allergic to betadine or any of the povidone iodine-based solutions that we might use in the operating room. But just remember to always be willing to adapt to changes and to best practice, and then we'll always be on top of providing the best care for our patients. That is all the time we have for today. On behalf of Chris, myself, and our whole team, thanks for listening to this week's episode of First Case.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of First Case. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing to First Case on your favorite podcast app or by downloading the smartphone app on iPhone or Android. Simply search for First Case in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@firstcasemedia.com. We look forward to hearing from you.